Last Sunday, we heard the good news that it's never too late. This Sunday, we hear the bad news that, well, maybe not so much. We live in a day and an age where the concept of judgment is considered anathema. Who are you to tell me that I'm wrong? After all, I'm an American. I can do anything I want, right? I'm free. Isn't it interesting? People bandy about the idea of freedom as if it were some big magic wand that you wave over somebody and poof, they don't have any responsibility anymore. The idea of freedom, ladies and gentlemen, in fact, let me give you this. This is free. It's not even part of the homily, but I just thought I'd toss it in there for added value. You do not have the freedom to do wrong. Because in doing wrong, you make yourself a slave. So therefore, there is no such thing as the freedom to do wrong. You don't have the freedom to do wrong. No one has freedom to do wrong, ever, under any circumstance, in any position. Freedom presupposes doing right, because it is only in doing right that perpetuates freedom. Doing wrong creates slavery. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. You do not have the freedom to do wrong. You may take the liberty to do wrong, but you will not remain free. You won't. Ask any alcoholic. Just one more drink. Ask any drug addict. Just one more hit. Ask any religious person. Oh, no, wait a second. Although I think it fits. Addiction is addiction. I don't care what drug you happen to be using. And so the challenge, brothers and sisters, when we talk about judgment, I remember when I was growing up, my grandfather would tell me all the time, son, always use good judgment. You ever remember that? You ever heard that phrase before? You should use good judgment. Judgment is a good thing, folks. It's a wonderful thing. And this modern, I'm preaching so I can say anything I want. This modern childish baby attitude of you can't judge me. You almost want to hand them a pacifier. Well, sweetheart, here's a little safe place for you. Here's a cuddly bear. You sit here quietly until you don't feel bad anymore. I don't want to be mean. But at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, life isn't for infants and babies. Real life is a struggle. If you've lived longer than 10 minutes, you know. Life is a struggle. It isn't going to be done well if you are perpetually locked away in a spiritual or emotional immaturity that makes you believe the world exists for your comfort. That is not reality. It's a fantasy. And it is a fantasy, ladies and gentlemen, that will hurt you. I am so concerned about the young men and the young women in our society today who have been, you ever heard of this concept, helicopter parents? You ever heard of that before? Helicopter parents? They fly in and rescue, or they fly in and they take care of this and that or the other. Kids in college, Mom, I got a C on my report and I'm triggered, Mom. Don't you worry about it, baby. Mama's going to be right over there and she's going to get that professor to straighten things out. Ladies and gentlemen, those young people who have been conditioned to believe that their comfort is the highest good will get into the real world and find out that not everybody is going to listen to their mama. And the crushing reality of that falling on them will do real emotional harm to them and to society. It is a poverty in our modern age that we have reduced our societal contract to a series of rights. These are my rights, these are your rights, we're going to follow the rights, we're going to make sure nobody steps on anybody's rights, and it's going to be about rights. Well, the sickness of that becomes that when you reduce human interactions to these are my boundaries, those are your boundaries, and there we go. Yeah, those are important, by the way, that's not bad. But when you reduce it to that, you find out that there's a very sick reality that comes into play, and it is exactly what our gospel lesson talks about today. The phrase that you hear both the righteous and the unrighteous use when they are having to stand before the awesome judgment seat of Christ. Lord, when did we see you this way? Now, I'm going to give you this before I get into that. The whole point of the Orthodox Christian life is to wake you and me up to reality, so that judgment, the awesome judgment seat of Christ, catches us by surprise. We are not to be caught by surprise. Even the second coming will be expected by those who are not asleep to reality. Even the moment of your death will not catch you by surprise if you are awake to the spiritual reality of the Orthodox Christian faith. The Orthodox Christian faith has one purpose in your life and in my life: keep you awake. We're about to step into Great Lent, which is the ultimate calendar alarm clock. My stomach is going to be thinking I've divorced it. It's going to be asking, why do you keep sending down the stuff that food eats? It doesn't make any sense to me. My stomach is going to be upset with me. And yet, brothers and sisters, my stomach, contrary to what you may see, is not my master. It shouldn't be my master. My desires and my passions and my wants should not be my master. I should be my desires' master. How can I do that? By staying awake. By allowing your faith to rouse you from the easy sleep of mediocrity. And so the whole purpose of our Orthodox faith is to keep us awake, so that the judgment day catches us asleep. We will hear the story later on in Great Lent about the 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins, so I won't rehearse it into your ear now. But the work that we've been doing to bring us to this point, from Zacchaeus Sunday to this moment, has taught us that our desires must be inventoried. We must be able to persevere, like the woman at Canaan, the Canaanite woman. We must understand that the Father loves us and wants us, like in the story of the prodigal son. We must understand that it is only through humility and a humble spirit that we will ever be able to enter into a relationship with God, like the publican and the Pharisee. And now the church brings us on this Meat Fair Sunday to the Last Judgment. And the phrase that both groups use, "When did we see you?" is instructive to you and me, for you to do a spiritual inventory in your own heart this morning, in this opportunity, under the auspices of the saints of God and the wisdom of 20 centuries of Christian theology, to stir your own soul and ask yourself, are you awake enough to answer that question? When did we see you? And Jesus, brothers and sisters, the world I came from was a world of theological speculation, theological contemplation. We would think great thoughts and talk about the anti-disestablishmentarian. No, that's not what we talked about. We would talk about all kinds of things like God's foreknowledge, or we would talk about God's personhood in His, that He knows everything. He is, and He's everywhere present. He's everywhere. And we would contemplate those big theological concepts and ideas. And that's not a bad thing, folks. Don't get me wrong. But make sure that you understand this one normal Orthodox truth. Normal orthodoxy has to do with your everyday life. That's normal orthodoxy. Orthodoxy is a way of life. It is not theological speculation and wondering about this book or that book. Although that's a good thing, it's not a bad thing. But practically speaking, your Orthodox faith is supposed to change how you treat each other. And if it isn't changing how you treat each other, my precious angels, you may be fill in the blank, but you're still struggling to become Orthodox. When did we see you hungry, naked, thirsty, in prison, without clothes? When did we see you this way? And Jesus answers both groups in the same way. Inasmuch as you did it or did not do it to the least of these, you did it or did not do it to me. The judgment seat of Christ is going to be an inventory of how you treated people around you. The judgment seat of Christ is going to be an unhidden inventory of how you treated those who you might think are less than you, or you think you are in a better position than they are, or you may even think you're in a worse position than they are. How you reacted to men and women around you is going to be the criteria of the last judgment. Now, I don't know about you. Let's just go ahead and say what's really hanging in the air. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I'm just going to be honest. This truth shakes me up. Because, brothers and sisters, there are times when I am thoughtless about who I'm dealing with around me. There are times when I fail to see Jesus Christ in one of the least of these, my brethren. I fail to see Jesus Christ in that person who disagrees with me politically. I fail to see Jesus Christ in that person from a different educational spectrum. I fail to see Jesus Christ in that person who is in a different economic situation than I am. I fail to see Jesus Christ in someone who is of a different race than I am. I fail to see Jesus Christ in those people, and I treat them that way. And when I do, I am revealing that I am asleep to the presence of Jesus Christ in the whole earth. Now, before we leave this homily thinking, oh, woe is me, and that's a pretty smart reaction if you're paying any attention at all. I mean, if you don't think you have any sin, then you're sitting back going, yeah, I'm glad I'm not like he is. But the honest ones of you, you know exactly who you are. You're sitting there thinking, probably need to do a little work. Thank God Lent's coming, right? Yeah. And confession, right? Yeah, okay. What is the purpose of the Orthodox faith? The purpose of the Orthodox faith is to keep you awake. Why do you think we're doing all this stuff, folks? So that you'll stay awake to seeing Jesus Christ in every person around you. The good news is, folks, is that until the final hour, when people are going to be seen for who they really are, and that's, ladies and gentlemen, what the judgment is. The judgment isn't Jesus with a magic wand turning people into sheep and goats as they come up to him. They show up as either a sheep or a goat. Jesus is just simply saying, this is where you belong, this is where you belong. You are going to show up at the final judgment who you really are. Not who you've purported to be, not the facade that you've worn in church, not how you've talked about yourself or thought about yourself and thinking to yourself, oh, I'm not as bad as that person. You are going to show up as you really are. And you're either going to be a sheep or a goat. And a sheep is the one who says, yes, master, and the goat says, I want my own way. And as C.S. Lewis said, on the last day, it will only be one situation. You either will look at Jesus and say, Lord, not my will, but thine be done, or Jesus is going to look at you and say, not my will, but thine be done. And Jesus will separate the sheep from the goats, and everybody will be in their proper place. Until that moment, brothers and sisters, St. Isaac's wisdom comes into play. This life has been given to you for metania, for repentance. Do not waste it on anything less. if your lifestyle, your normal Orthodox lifestyle, isn't a lifestyle of repentance, you are asleep, and the judgment will catch you by surprise. The rhythm of faith that is normal orthodoxy keeps you spiritually awake. Your ability or willingness to embrace that lifestyle is a testimony of whether you're serious about being orthodox or if it's just a decoration. But make no mistake about it, my precious friends, that is your responsibility. You are free to do right, or you are at liberty to remain a slave. But make no mistake about it, that is your responsibility. He who has ears to hear, let him hear.